If you've been exploring gel printing with me for a while, you've probably tried working with botanicals, and you've lightly played with some handmade textures. But what happens when you combine the two? In today's video, I'm going to show you how working with botanicals and textures can create more visually interesting prints with beautiful little surprises you just can't get from a single technique. This is a great next step if you're ready to move beyond simple layers and start building richer prints. I've created lots of accent papers. For these, I often use texture stamps I've either found or made myself. Today, I'd like to shift gears and make some standalone prints. Prints that can hold their own as finished pieces rather than being used in collage. I'll share options for both single layer and two-layer prints. Both are easy, approachable, and great for experimenting. Let's start with the one-layer print. All of the supplies I'm using today are listed in the description. I'm using Golden Open acrylic paint, but if you don't have that, just mix a bit of Golden Open gel into your regular acrylics to extend the drying time. I'm just rolling out this part of my plate today because I'm going to be printing on 9x12 mixed media paper, so I don't need the whole thing. I'm going to be probably using two colors on most of these prints, and I just kind of spread them around there and roll them out. I kind of like the way that they disperse themselves on the plate. Now, how much paint you use for this is kind of important. I need to have a strong image of the botanical when I lift it. So I need to have enough paint on the plate to give me a good ghost. But if I have a lot of paint on the plate, then my texture may not go so well. So it's a little bit of a fine tuning. Just give it a try and see how it works out for you. So I've got my paint laid out on the plate. I have today's victims, the botanicals that I'm going to be using. Sometimes they need a little bit of modification. And when I'm putting these out on the plate, I'm just trying to think of what would make kind of a nice design. So some taller, some shorter, maybe some going in one direction, some going in another. And maybe some crossing over as well. And if you're using the Golden Open paint, you have a fair bit of time to mess around with this. You've got some time to play with the images on your plate, play with the paints. I think that'll be fine. So I've got some different directions and I think it's going to look okay. Now, normally I would just print this and I would take a couple of negatives and then I would lift them up and I would print the positive or ghost. But today I'm going to combine it with one of my other favorite techniques, which is texture. I've created different kinds of texture plates over time. This one is just using little squares. You get these from the dollar store. They're wooden, and then I just glue them onto a piece of cardboard. This is where I cut out some letters out of some foam, and one of my plates has the letters themselves. This one has got the piece of what was left from the letters. So when I've got things like this, I can just basically put it down and press it in, and I'm going to press it in right over top of the plant. And you might want the same texture in more than one place. I love to experiment like this. I just like to see what would happen if. Now, sometimes the texture is going to come through better where the plants are blocking it. Obviously, it won't. But that is part, I think, of the beauty of this technique, is just seeing what's going to happen. There we go. So the first type of print I'll take from this is going to be a negative print. I've got my mixed media paper here, 9 by 12, and I'm just going to basically put it over top of the part with the vegetation on it, and then give it a good rub. Now this mixed media paper is a little bit thicker, so it may not give me a super detailed negative image of these plants, but I think it'll be interesting. I think it'll do a good job. And it never hurts to give it a really good rub with your fingers. Okay, let's take a look at this. Oh yeah. So that's quite interesting in of itself. And I'm going to put this aside for a 2-layer print. I'll be using this one as the first layer. These are quite strong colors I've used, particularly the Indian yellow. So I'm going to do a second negative. There we go. And again, I'm going to put that aside for a second layer. Now I'm going to lift up the plants and print what's left. Now this has to be done a little gingerly, you know, who goes over top of whom. And I like to take it and flip it upside down onto the work surface. It not only keeps the work surface a little bit cleaner, but if I go to use that plant again, I might remember which side is, is up and which side's down. Now, if you get debris, which can happen when you're printing with botanicals, just go ahead and pick it off. So now, let's print this. There we go. So I've got quite a nice botanical print here. I love the texture in this. This plant's quite nice. It's just something that my friend identified as a weed in her garden, so I picked it for her. And I've got some really nice subtle texture in the background. It just adds a little bit to the overall print. Now I think this particular color is light enough that it's not going to give me a tremendous amount on a second positive. So I think I'll just go ahead and add some more paint to this. And again, the amount of paint is fairly important here. Too much and our negative prints won't be all that interesting. And not enough and we won't get a really good clear image for the ghost print, the positive print. This is going to be darker than I was expecting. That happens. When you're rolling out and something kind of does its own thing, that's okay. Just go with the flow. You might learn something. I often find the prints that were a little unexpected have little treasures in them. So this will be good. This will actually give me a bit of a darker print for the vegetation. So flipping it back over so that I can get the wet stuff back down on the plate. And just try different arrangements on the plate and see what suits you. Now I've got the paint on, the plants on, so now I'm going to give it some texture. Whoops. Now if that happens to you, just take a moment and try to put the plant back where it came from. There, that's not too bad. This is just string glued onto a piece of foam core. And this is just the packaging off of something I bought at the grocery store. There. Now, if you like, you can take something like this drink cooler and add some other marks. And this is one of my favorites. It's some kind of a whisk, but it makes a lovely spiral. There. Okay, now this first one is likely to be fairly dark. It's going to be a negative print. Oh, there we go. Again, that's got some very interesting shapes on it. It might be a little bit dark to add a second layer to it, but I'll put it aside for the second layers. This one I think could be really interesting. Typically, after you've gotten one layer of paint off, the texture becomes more obvious, and I like that. Oh yeah, see how beautiful that is. I love those colors. That's a bit of the green gold with some ultramarine blue. And now, and you can see that this is going to be darker this time. Oh, and look at that. I find too, as the plate warms up, you probably get a little bit more texture coming through. There was paint on the plate before I added the additional green and gold. So as you do more of these, think about what marks you liked in the previous ones, and then make more of those. So if there was something that really appealed to you, bring it out for another go. I also find, like in this one, I've got this transparent red iron oxide over here. I've got the green on this side. When I stamp into the green and then over to the transparent red iron oxide, it actually leaves quite a beautiful nuanced mark. So this one will just be a straight negative print. with that really interesting shape of that weed and then all the texture in the background. Now I'm going to lift this and place it upside down on my work surface. And look at all the beautiful detail in there. Oh yeah. I like the blues and the browns and the green gold from the middle. That's a stunning print. And I just want to see what I could get from what's left on the plate. And this is always a good idea, especially with the golden open paints. You get so many prints out of these, and sometimes those fainter ones are just so pretty. Oh, take a look at that. It's more delicate than the last pull, and I like that. I do like that anthracnone blue. And that's got some really interesting shapes in it. Now, while I'm working on the plate, I'd like to print a couple of textured backgrounds, fairly light, that I could put a second layer, which would be the botanical, over top. So for this, I need to make sure I don't use too much paint. Too much paint's going to end up making this really quite dark, whereas if I just put on a little bit of paint and take my time rolling it out, then I can make it lighter and I won't need to take pulls just to lighten it up. If I've got too much paint on the plate, I can always just take a pull, and that will immediately lighten the value. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. So up to now, we've been combining the texture and the botanicals on the same pull-up, the same part of the plate. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to take separate prints and then combine the botanicals onto those. That one's a little bit lighter, and it's more motley. It's kind of interesting. Sometimes when I roll up some color, and I think maybe, you know, it's a little bit on the thick side, and I'm going to get a pretty dark print to start off with, and maybe not as much texture as I'd like. I'll just take a piece of printer paper and use that to lift some of the paint. That was a little bit too much. Now I've got something that I can definitely put texture into. You can really clearly see those. Oh, that's perfect. That's just about the right amount of color and value that I was looking for. Again, with just the paper, printer paper. Now, another thing that you can do, just to add some more interest to a print, is to texture the plate like this, and then before you pull the print, just drop some circle stencils onto it. What this will do is it'll just make white spaces in your print, which the botanical will then go over top of. I like having different ways of working, and this is definitely easy and accessible. There we go. Let's take a look at this. Oh yeah. So I quite like all the texture, but having a bit of the white still there is nice as well. I think those circle stencils, when you pull them back off, you know, that makes a very interesting pattern in the print as well. I recommend making several roll-ups. Every time you set up the plate, you learn something. What colors, textures, and botanicals you like or don't like. Each choice changes the outcome. Keep experimenting. Now that we've looked at the one-layer print option, let's take things a step further and create some two-layer prints. These aren't complicated techniques, but they can lead to some really rich, surprising results. So now I'm going to take this slightly lighter negative print that I've already pulled, and I'm going to put this over top of it. Where the two sets of plants overlap, the white of the paper will be saved. Where this plant is there, then the original color of the background will be saved. Get quite an interesting combination here. Oh yeah. So I've got the original background, I've got some white, and now I've got my new background as well, overlapping the original background. So I'd like to print a second negative on this. And I think I'm going to go with blues. I think the blue would actually work really well with this. So I have anthraquinone blue, which is quite strong, but I think it will give me an interesting print over top of that green. I like this particular weed because it blocks out a fair bit of the paint from below, which means that when I'm putting that on top of this, that I will save some of the white. First of all, I'm going to print this on a fresh piece of paper. because it's quite dark. And I think it might overwhelm the lighter colors on that print. And this, of course, will make a useful print on its own. Look at that gorgeous color. And now I'll print it with this one. Oh, look at that. That's quite nice and subtle. You can clearly see both patterns coming through. And I like the color combination. So I have a few prints that I would like to add a second layer and a strong botanical image. Now for this, I'm going to need a fairly strong dark layer. So I'm using Payne's Gray, and I'm using quite a lot of it. I would like this to have lots of contrast when I print it over top of the original print. Now there's still a little green in here, which is good because the backgrounds I want to print on are green. So that will give it some color harmony. But you can see how thick that is. That's really quite a thick layer of paint. Okay. Make sure I get this the right side down. That one's clean, so I don't have to worry about it. Okay, now I need to get all the background paint off of this. So I can do that with printer paper. In this case, I'm going to do it with tissue paper because I can use the tissue paper in my collages. I like the tissue paper because I can see what I've got. I know where I've pressed and where I haven't. So it gives me an idea of where I need to do a bit of rubbing. And I'm using this brayer for this first amount of pressing because this actually bleeds through the tissue a bit. It's going to give you dirty fingers. But, you know, hey, it's all paint, all washes off. There we go. You can see that's quite a striking pattern. And of course, the paint that I'm taking off here is just the paint in the background. The paint underneath the plant will be protected and will be what I'll be using to make an image on the background that I've prepared. Well, I'll need to keep going. There's still more paint on there. When I'm done all this lifting in the background, I should be able to get two positive prints out of this. One for a dark background and one for a lighter background. I really like these ones for my collage work. The darker ones, less so. And one more clean off should be good. I can always tell when I'm cleaning off with tissue because I can see whether or not it's coming through. There's a tiny bit coming up around the leaves now, but most of it's good and clean. That was from my fingers, not the plate. And see, that one's going to be another very useful tissue. So in case you weren't keeping track, that was 5, 5 clean off tissues. Okay, so now I'm going to have to remember to take them off in the same order I put them on. Oh, look at that. Oh, I quite like that. Now this is one of my darker backgrounds. So I'm thinking there's so much paint on here, that should work out just fine. This will be a good dark botanical to put on this background. Oh, and look at that. So this is a different way of doing the texture with the botanicals, doing it in 2 layers instead of 1. Now I have this quite light background, and I'm thinking that would work just fine for this. Oh, there we go. See, that's kind of a nice balance. If it had been the really dark botanical, it would have been too much. But having the slightly lighter botanical over the lighter background looks just fine. This is another one of the weeds I found over by the dog park, and I'm not even really sure what it is. It just had kind of interesting shape to it, so I picked some of it and put it in water when I got home. So I'm going to take the one with the circles on it and print this one on here. Oh yeah, I like that combination. It's got the dark blue things, weeds, against that beautiful background, and then saving the white. It almost looks like multiple moons coming up in the background. So let's take a look at the results of the printing sessions. So these are some of the 1-layer prints, and these are the negative prints. So the plants are still in white, and the backgrounds are the colors and the textures. I think some of these are really quite striking in terms of their design and their color. These are some of my favorites of the positive prints from the 1-layer prints. This is where I've already taken the negative print, lifted the plant, and then printed the strong image of the plant with the textured background. And I think some of these are really beautiful. I really like the different kinds of marks that I made in the background. And what kind of marks you like might be different than the kind of marks I like. Experimenting will get you that answer. Now for the 2-layer prints, this is where I combined one negative with another negative. And this is the first one I made. And I think that the second negative, I just had too much ink on the plate and it was a bit too strong because it kind of dominated and didn't allow the earlier print to show through. This one I kind of like better because I can still clearly see both sets of plants. And of course, all the fun texture that's in there. And then these are where I printed a texture background either with the circle masks or without. And then, as a completely separate layer, applied the Botanicals. And I really like these too. Of all of them, I think this one might be my favorite. So if you take a look at your prints and pull out a few that you like, this is a 1-layer print. This is a 2-layer where I've combined 2 negatives together, and this one with the Botanicals over top of a textured background. And I also find that it's really a big help to take some framing mats and just put them over top of one of your prints. That instantly elevates it to another level. I hope this gives you some ideas for combining botanicals and texture stamps in your own gel printing. Whether you're creating collage papers or standalone prints, layering these two techniques can really bring your work to life. Remember, the more you experiment, the more you'll discover what works for you. And sometimes the best prints come from happy accidents. If you found this helpful, please give the video a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more gel printing tips and techniques. And don't forget to check the description for links to related videos and a list of all the supplies I used today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you the next time.